in Walton Hall. This was in Milford, Connecticut, and it was taught by nuns and was all girls. And it was a very beautiful, gentle life. My parents were very, very gentle people. My father was with Connecticut Light and Power. My mom was home all the time. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. We've always had very good relationships. Nobody in my family understood. I didn't know really who I really was. I had a time finding who I was and why. Why was I different? Why were there things that I could see that nobody seemed to understand? And the nuns, when I said in class one time, in my French teacher, that her lights were brighter than Mother Superior's, I mean, that didn't fly. Wow. And as a result of that, my parents also, loving, caring, but they didn't understand what lights. They talked about things in Ireland and like that, but to understand what it was that was happening, I just didn't know, and neither did anybody else. I really never felt vindicated until I was at UCLA, and I worked with Dr. Thelma Moss and Dr. Johnson, who wanted to test me as a natural psychic. I have never read a book on psychic ability. I had never spent that much time with people with psychic ability. I was an artist, and so was my husband. We taught art, we exhibited art, we sold art, and made a very, very good living at it. We had a daughter, and we were very happy. Well, I began to realize the man I married never ever told me at the time that he grew up in a home that was very haunted. Very haunted. He grew up in a home much different than I did. There were alcohol, none of that in my house. Fighting, arguing, none of that in my house. He said to my parents one time, when he had come to dinner, you have tablecloths and napkins. He said, how nice it is to eat like this. But he himself, from the time he was 13 years old, worked. He worked for these stores, done things like that, delivering groceries on his bike, and he bought his own clothes. He never conformed to that way of life. I met him at 16. I was home from school in the summer. We were going to a movie at the Colonial Theater on Boston Post Road in Bridgeport. There were a lot of defense factories. This was the 40s. We were getting ready to leave the theater. They had introduced me to him. Just a nice, very clean-cut kid. I looked at him, from the Argyle socks he was wearing to the strollers he had on. Strollers. I don't think they still even call them that. To the crease in his pants and that snow-white shirt and jacket. He was a lifeguard during the day in the summer, and he worked in the theater at night. As we got ready to leave the theater, there was an air raid. Defense factories abounded, from Sikorsky's, General Electric, Bridgeport Brass, Remington Arms, just target. But that, to me, was foreign. Any part of that war whole thing just didn't really, I didn't understand it, and it didn't make sense to me. So he was going to, they had to keep us in the theater until it was an all clear. Then he said he got paid, and he was going to buy us all a Coke. They were a nickel. I didn't order a Coke. I've never drank Coke. I ordered an ice cream soda, and he told me, later on, he told me that he knew I was a gold digger from the first night he met me. So, anyway, he walked home with us, but his home was first. And I was happy about that because he certainly couldn't walk me home because he never picked me up. But there was a group of us. And as he ran across the street, that 142-pound athletic boy, I didn't see. I seen a man. That man was the man who died 4 years ago. He looked exactly like my husband the day he died. I took care of my husband for 4 years. He was a full care patient. The day he died, he looked just like that man. I wrote in my diary, "I'll spend the rest of my life with you." And I did. Well, I came home from school one day, and he was in my parents' home. He was in the kitchen. And I walked in, and I said, "Wow." And I said, "Hi, Bob." Bob Thompson was with him, his close friend. And Ed, "What are you doing here?" And we enlisted. They enlisted in the Navy. Thompson was killed. They found out Ed was 16, and rather than not let him go, they let him go on his 17th birthday. He made 3 crossings across the North Atlantic before he ever turned 18 years old. He became a man very, very early. And the last one, the 2 ships collided in the North Atlantic in February, and he was one of 69 survivors on 2 ships, and he saved the life of another man. Again, he never talked about hauntings.